Hi, something a bit different for you today. I'm going to talk about my visit to the prisoner of war camp at Henllan, where they kept first Italian prisoners and then German ones later on. The main reason for visiting is that there is an amazing chapel that was decorated by the prisoners, and it's supposed to be the only one of its kind on mainland Britain that still remains. Well, the site started off being owned by the council, and then it was taken on by the War Office. I'm afraid you'll have to put up with me reading my notes. The Italian prisoners were brought by sea, which must have taken a hell of a long time, and then by Henllan Railway around September 1940. Now the little railway's still there, and it's now run as a tourist attraction. They lived there until 1944, and then shortly after that German prisoners were brought there, and they stayed there until just after the war. The camp was self-contained. It was almost like its own little village. It had its own hospital, which included a dentist and facilities for medical procedures, and they had tennis courts, a cricket pitch, a football pitch. There was a specially adapted building for drying their washing, and there were kitchens and even a little theatre, which sadly no longer survives. I had preconceptions about a prisoner of war camp, but their prisoners were treated really well, and they were able to go out in the community, and they even had football matches against local neighbouring towns. Now the camp held around 1,000 prisoners at a time, which is huge, and most of them were Catholic. They asked if they could have a place for worship, and they were given a hut, but they had to build everything inside themselves. So they used whatever they could. A mixture of wood, concrete, plasterboard, corned beef tins, which they cut up, wire, all sorts of things. I'll be able to show you some pictures, which you can kind of see how things were made. They created an altar with candles. The windows had kind of shapes put round them to make them look like church windows, and all these were made from wood. And a lot of the wood was then covered with metal from the corned beef tins and things, and then painted. And they look really realistic, but it's almost like an illusion. You look at something from the front, and then you look from the back, and you can see that it's all just an illusion. I can show you some pictures now. The paint they made had to be all from natural products, such as boiling up onion skins, potato peels and tea bags to make browns, and they used sticks and fingers and all sorts to apply the paint. The concrete inside the hut was painted to replicate marble, and apparently they wouldn't give away their secrets on how they got it so accurate. Above the altar is a painting of the Last Supper, Most of the work was done by a young man called Mario, who was the youngest prisoner. He joined the army at 18. And by trade he was a jeweller, but he had an amazing talent for painting. So most of what you see here is his work. But during the daytime, the Italians were sent out to work on farms and the big estates by day. I was told that a farm near where I live had Italian prisoners working on it. They took them out in the back of a truck, and then at the end of the day they picked them up. And some of them went further afield and would stay and then be picked up again at the weekend. Now, one of the neighbouring estates where they went, very close to Henllan, is Bromwith, which was featured in one of my previous videos. Now, originally the little prisoner of war church had a bell tower, and somehow, mysteriously, a bell appeared in the tower that used to be the bell at Bromwith Mansion. But quite how that happened, I don't know. It was obviously pilfered by somebody. The prisoners also were very friendly with the refugee children up at the mansion, because it was used as a school for evacuees at that time. And we were told that the prisoners used to make little toys and things for the children to play with. Many of the Italians made their home here after the war, which shows how well they were treated. They were adopted by the local community, and some married local ladies. And many of the descendants also started local businesses, such as coffee shops and things. But following the war, the camp went back to the council, and it became a school for local children, which eventually closed when the school in Henllan was built. Around this time, the bell disappeared, and somehow, many years later, we were told it ended up in the Catholic Church in Henllan, where it's still used. I haven't seen it, but I'd like to go and have a look one day. Unfortunately, the bell tower on the church has now been taken down because it was unsafe. But inside, they found some hidden tea ration tins, some newspaper cuttings, and a cigarette packet, which we were actually allowed to hand around and have a look at close up. I think I should have a picture of the cigarette packet for you here. The council eventually sold the site to the current owner's father, where he started a business, and he let the smaller units out for small companies to start up. They used to open the chapel so that people could just go and view it, but unfortunately they had problems with unscrupulous people going in and stealing money from the collection tin, and also taking little trinkets and mementos that had been left by the Italians. At one time it was locked, and people even broke in through the side of the building so they could go in. So very sadly it's now no longer accessible unless by appointment. The building was getting into quite a poor state, and they did try and get help, but all the help came with conditions, such as they had to put up so much money themselves, or they had to have somebody on site permanently to allow the place to be open, and this just wasn't viable, which was really sad. We did find a few years later, one of the Italians came back with his daughter, and he got in touch to to see whether he could come over with other prisoners of war that stayed there for a reunion. And this actually took place in 1977. And apparently the prisoners were amazed to see the place, although some of the buildings had fallen. Mario, the artist, continued to visit regularly until just before he died, when he became too ill to no longer come over. On his last voyage, he gifted 14 paintings which would be displayed all around the church. That was the one condition of them. And they depicted the Stations of the Cross. I can show you a picture of a few of them now. Unfortunately, the theatre had fallen into disrepair and was too bad to save, but a couple of the paintings were salvaged, and they were told that they were pictures of the artist where the artist lived. You can see the landscape, and that was his home in Italy, painted from memory. Now, one mystery remained. When the Italians came back, they were absolutely certain that the picture of Jesus above the altar on the Last Supper didn't have a halo. Mario said he never painted one, but now you can see very clearly there is one. But all the paint was dated by specialists, and it was all from the same time period. So we were asked to consider whether it was a case of bad memory or a miracle. I'll leave you some more paintings here, and I hope you enjoy. And if you ever get the chance to visit this wonderful place, I will put a link underneath to the Facebook page. They take bookings from large groups, and occasionally they do evening openings by prior arrangement only. So thank you for watching. Bye.